Hello.
Hello, matey.
Hey, how are you doing?
Hello.
Not bad.
Yeah. Cool. Sunday again. In Groundhog Day. Just give a few minutes for loads of people to join. And then we'll get started. How are you, Steve? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Busy.
Really, yeah?
Yeah, I've been building Darth Vader chest LED systems today out of WS2812 and Arduinos and things. Probably not in focus now.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah, a bit annoying because I just sent a video to the client and he said, "Oh, and can you also do this, and this?" I was like, "Well, that wasn't in the scope."
Yeah. It's fun when that happens, isn't it?
Always happens.
How's Escape Room doing?
Quiet, but I've put a quote in for a refurb of another 2 rooms and a build of a brand new big room at a different site.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they've come back saying the quote is very reasonable, but they're just waiting for funding now. So fingers crossed.
How quickly do those places turn over the rooms?
What do you mean turnover? Like from one group leaving to another group going in?
No. I mean, like, I redo them. Like,
oh, I mean, it depends how long's a piece of string. One of the rooms only needs minor work doing to it. Another room is pretty much scrap it and start again. And the new room is massive, so it's going to take probably 3 months to build, I would think, at least. The room I'm working on at the moment at a different site, we're due to be ready by the end of March, but now most of it's done. The basic room is built, like the walls and everything are up. I've now got to just start putting together all the puzzles and things and getting them built nicely. They're mostly done in prototype, just like on bits of acrylic and things, but I've got to make them look pretty now and gorilla proof.
I love those things. Why are you against it?
Jersey.
Yeah.
De la Manche.
Yes, a bit far away.
It's a long way to go to get locked in.
What was that, Michael?
I said it's a long way to go to get locked in.
Oh.
Yes.
Indeed.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, very cool. Good. Okay. So what we're going to do today is go through Fusion 360. I will start at the very, very, very basics. And what I'll do, just go through some of the basic design principles and mainly focused on 3D printing. Things like overhangs and all of that kind of considerations that you do when you're printing. So I'll probably do 20 minutes or so just on the introduction, and then we'll probably build something. We might build a dome or a foot or something like that. And then if you've got any questions or very specifics, we can sort of drill into that a little bit later on, if that makes sense for everybody. Mm-hmm. Fabulous. I've getting good at this. I've actually managed to start recording on time, which is fantastic. Let me now just share my screen. There we go. Okay, can everybody see a lovely empty Fusion 360 screen? Yep, cool. So Fusion 360 at the moment is still free for personal use. You can download it from their website. They have put a couple of restrictions on it recently in that you can run 10 projects at once. So they're still committed to giving it free of charge for hobbyists, but if you're starting to do anything that's big scale or commercial, they are looking to push people towards a licensing model. And it isn't cheap, it's a few $100s a year to run it. So for what we do and for what you guys are doing, the free version will work perfectly well. there's very little difference in features and functionality between the two. So I don't really know that you're kind of missing out on functionality and not really doing. So I'm just trying to keep an eye on the waiting room, make sure I don't leave people outside there. Okay, so when you install Fusion, this is the default view that you get. And you've got a toolbar across the top like you would do most applications, and you've got a browser across the left-hand side, and those are your main two areas that you'll work in. Fusion's is a cloud-based system, so all of your files and designs you can see are all stored in the cloud, and that's accessed just on this little column, this little data panel. And you can order this into folders. You can also back up and store your designs locally, so they're not got to be held on the cloud. I tend to back stuff up fairly regularly, obviously, with some of the intricate designs that you've got. The other great thing with Fusion is you start to build a portfolio of stuff that you've designed already. You can pretty much pick on these and go into them and edit and sort of change them. Right. The first thing I'll cover, and I cover this all the time, is I do what's called direct modeling. So there's different types of statuses almost, or that you can set Fusion into, and I do direct. And what I do is I click on, if you right click on document settings there, and do not capture design history. You know where the design history is on, because along the bottom you've got this this little play and a few symbols. So I click off do not design history. It tells me at that time the timeline and all design history will be removed and further operations will not be captured in the timeline. Hit continue and that disappears. The reason I do that is that what Fusion does, if you leave the timeline on, is it records everything that you do. So you can go back a number of steps, you can change something, and then you can go forward. But to do that in the background, what it does is very complicatedly link all of your objects and everything that you're building. And what that does mean is that when you start to make changes, sometimes strange or kind of unexpected things happen. The absolute, if you want to be a professional CAD designer and you want to work for an organization and produce blueprints off the back of it, then absolutely you can keep the timeline in there. But for people, for playing around, that's, I think, the biggest hurdle that people find is that they feel that they're wrestling against Fusion 360 because of that timeline. So I would always recommend when you're first starting to play with it, switch it off. You can have a dig into it and start to look at what it does by turning it on at a later date. There's a guy called Lars, I can't remember what he's called, Lars Mendelsohn or something, who absolutely fantastic YouTube clips on using Fusion 360. If you wanted to look at some of the kind of more, I guess, orthodox ways of doing it. But what I wanted to do in this session is get you started and just share how I tend to do things. So the first thing I do is disable the design history. The next thing I do is enable the origins. And Fusion 360, we'll repeat a lot of things, so don't worry if I'm going through things fairly quickly. Fusion 360 works simply on these within this browser window of sketches and bodies. So let's start by making something. So if we want to make a 20 by 20 millimeter cube and print that out, the first thing we would do is we would want to draw a square 20 by 20 millimeter, which is called a sketch. And again, if you hover over these things in Fusion, what it does do is it tells you a little bit more about the tool. So I'm going to click on Create Sketch. A sketch is a two-dimensional object. So a sketch is not three-dimensional. So when you click on Sketch, it's now asking what plane, X, Y, Z, which of these planes do I want to create this sketch on? So I'm just going to click, what should we click on? That plane there. And then I'm going to, and as soon as you do that, you'll go into sketch mode. And what you'll see is all your tools across the top will change. You'll have a sketch palette that comes up, and you'll have your kind of your design stuff. Can you see a box called Sketch Palette? Yeah, you can. Cool. Okay. Just sometimes when you share windows, it doesn't give you the full all of the windows that pop up. So just want to make sure you can see what I'm seeing. So I'm going to go up to the solids here. I'm going to click on a 2-point triangle, which is a 2-point rectangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag that out, and I'm going to do as you can see, as I drag it, the numbers change. If you let go of your mouse, I can just type 20. I can tab, and I can type another 20. I can type tab, press return. And what I've done is I've created a 20 by 20 millimeter sketch. It's a flat 2-dimensional object. So at this point, it isn't actually a solid. It's what I call a sketch. And I'm still in the sketch mode. So on the top menu, I can click Finish Sketch, and I'll go back into solid modes. So the Fusion 360, and if you drop down here, there's lots of different modes it can go on that dictates the particular mode that you're in. Oh, hello. No, cool. So now I'm back into solid mode. And when you're in solid mode, this is where you create 3-dimensional objects. So all we've got at the moment is we've got a square that we've created that's 20 by 20 millimeters. Because it's all of the peripheries are all connected together, it's a continuous loop or a continuous object. When I hover my mouse over it, you can see it kind of goes a color, which means I can select that as I can select that particular square. And if I click create and extrude, and again, if I type 20 into there and click OK, I've now created a 20 by 20 millimeter cube. So if you then wanted to print that out on your printer, you can then export that as an STL, and away you go. Now, a couple of things have happened in this little bar on the left-hand side, in this browser bar. You'll see that bodies have appeared and sketches have appeared. And these are two fundamental things that we do with Fusion. We have sketches, which we've just drawn, and bodies, which are solid objects. If I wanted to print that, I could right-click on that, and I could click on Save as STL. And then I just click OK, and it will literally then take me to a browser window so that I could then save that as an STL file, and which you can load straight into a slicer and print. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
Cool.
Good.
Any questions at this point?
How do you resize your browser window? Because it basically takes up half the screen now. And there is no drag bar or anything on it.
How do I resize the browser window?
Yeah, the one on the left.
Oh, this window?
Yeah.
Yeah, as you start to create more and more complex objects and it goes longer and longer and longer, you will have a scroll bar in there so you can go further down.
Mm-hmm.
So as we start to create, so I don't know, if I do something very quickly. I'll show you what I mean. Let's do 10. Oops. 20 of those. So now what I've done is I've got 20 objects, so you can see the browser bar's gone down, and I've got a little scroll bar at the side that lets me go down, up and down on there. Delete that.
Yeah.
Even though we've turned off the timeline, you can still use the undo and the redo button, so it doesn't stop you kind of undoing and going back and back and back. But when you save it and then if you reload it, you can't then, it doesn't retain that undo memory. Okay, so I just wanted to do that block that we did there to get the concepts of what the sketch was and what the bodies are. So sketch is 2-dimensional objects, bodies are actually the cubes. Right, so what we'll do is I'll just quickly show you how we then use sketches and bodies together to do a little bit more complex shapes. And what I'll do probably is we'll maybe do a dome because that's familiar to all of us. So if I hit on the sketch button, always start with a sketch. what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to select this plane here to draw a dome. And I'm just going to use a simple line command. I'm going to go from the center and it'll all become apparent, but what I'll do is I'm going to do a 100mm high dome. There we go. And oops. And then the body of the R2, I'll make 100mm. So what I'm going to do is just do a line that's 50mm. And what we're actually going to do is I'm going to sketch the profile of the dome, and then we're going to rotate it round to create something. Okay, so again, lots and lots of sketch tools. If we go in there, you can draw circles, triangles, arcs, splines. You've got a whole bunch of tools in there. I'm just going to quickly drag a spline. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a very strange shaped dome, something like that. Take that. So what I've done there, if you can see, is I've actually created a sort of a half profile of the dome that I'm going to create. And again, with all of these, you can go in and tweak some of the little points. You can tweak the angle of the shape that you've actually done by dragging the dots around. And really, if you start with Fusion 360, the best thing to start with is just to playing around with some of the different tools and getting a handle on how it actually how you can do sketches. Sketches are probably the most important thing. So I've created a sketch. I'm in sketch mode as we said we were before, and now I'm going to click Finish Sketch. And the next thing, then this drops me into solid mode. So this is about creating bodies. So again, because I've got a full perimeter, it lets me select that. And if I click Create, I've got a bunch of tools here. There are some things in here where you can create boxes, cylinders, spheres, all sorts of things. That almost bypasses the sketch mode. It just creates a solid object straight away. My preference is always to do a sketch in the first instance, and then to start to, from that, create the body that you want. So I've showed you extrude, which is how we did that 20 to 20mm block. What I'm going to show you now is something called revolve. And what revolve does is it takes that, that profile that we've got there and it revolves it around a single line. So I'll click on revolve. It's asking me which profile I want to select. I've got one selected. It's asking me the axis I want to select. I'm going to select that axis. And as soon as I've clicked on the axis, if I just drag that around, you can see it's created the dome. So I'll click OK. And there we go. We've got kind of a the start of a dome.
Very nice.
Yep. Now, that particular technique that I've just done there is brilliant, and it's incredibly easy just to do all sorts of things. So if, for example, you wanted to do a greeble that was a power coupling rod or whatever you want to call it, you can draw yourself a straight line like that. And then what you can do is you can just draw it, just play around in Bob Ross style. You can play around and just kind of draw yourself.
Happy trees.
Draw some happy trees, exactly. There we go.
Can you drop in type?
You can indeed. Yep. I'll just finish
May I
this.
interrupt for a split second? Can you import Illustrator vector?
You can indeed. Yeah, you can import DXF files. I think they are.
Okay. Thank you.
If you click on insert there, you've got SVG files and DXF files.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Okay. So as you can see, what we've got there is my start of a greeble, and then finish sketch, highlight the profile, create, revolve, hit that axis, click OK, and I've now got that.
Oh,
That's nice.
that's
So-
That's
awesome.
very cool.
I'm giving all my secrets away. You just be able to
Yeah.
fly off and go and do all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's really kind of cool to do little things like that. And there's loads of different tools that can do these sort of things, but you've just got to kind of get used to the very basics in the first instance. So if I've built that, one of the one of the other things that's incredibly useful with this is where you want to try and reference something as a, oops, got a bit of noise there. Just going to mute everybody. You can obviously unmute to ask questions. It's just so we've not got the background noise, so we can put people off. Right, what I'll show you as well is where you want to take the reference of something and start to create. So across this top, lots of things that you can do. We've covered some of the design ones, but you can insert all sorts of things. Now I can insert what's called a canvas. So I'll click on insert canvas and it'll let me click on insert from my computer. I can click on and browse for images. Don't know what images have we got that sits in here that we can pull in. Let's pull a chopper in like that. There we go. So I can choose an image like chopper, select a face that image comes on, and what I've got now is I've got a resizable backdrop picture that I can use as a reference. This is actually a render of the chopper I designed, but it'll do. So I can position this wherever I want to do, and I can click OK. And what that's given me now is it's given me a reference point. It's not necessarily the right scale. So, for example, the standard width of an R2D2 dome is 463 millimeters. So I don't know if this particular image is exactly the scale that I want to. So another little thing you can do is once you pull this in and it's flat, as you can see there, it's kind of flat on the on the axis. Is under canvases, which is what I've just pulled in. That image is called front. Now click on that. I can edit that canvas, and what I can do is I can make it more solid, or I can fade it so that I can choose as I'm drawing through it. But I'll stick it about there. Now a really, really useful thing on this canvas is if I right click on that and click on calibrate, I can resize the canvas. And what calibrate lets me do, remember I said that R2D2's dome is 463 millimeters. I can zoom right in and say from that point there to that point there, at the moment, a little windows come up, which is on the middle of the left-hand side, is 113. But I want it to be 463 because I know that that's how big R2D2 actually is. I'm using chopper, but hey ho. Click OK, click return on that. And what it does is it resizes the image so that now if I was to draw a line, just draw a line on here. If I was to draw a line from there to there, you can see that is 463 mil. So what it's actually done is it's now sized that reference image at exactly the same size. So if you're looking at a particular prop or something that you want to create, what you can do first of all is bring the image in as a reference, size it, and then you can start to draw it. And the way I draw Chopper's dome is I'd probably take a line from there to there, which is 463. There we go. Done. Okay. And as I said, when I'm doing domes, I'll tend to do them in profile. If I hover along that line, it'll freeze at some point with a little triangle. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but where it freezes, it's automatically found the center point of that line. So I'll just do a center point straight up, click tick, and then literally you can, if you wish to, then just kind of start to trace out the edges of that dome and you get a perfect profile of the dome. Now, of course, the picture that we're looking at here is a perspective picture and we're drawing in isometric, which means we're drawing in flat. So you've got to kind of take that into account when you start to build these things, but it gives you a really good point of reference. So I'm going to pull that back flat to there. And what I've got there then is I've got a pretty accurate profile of a chopper dome, and then exactly the same as before. I do create. I finish the sketch, get into solid mode, create, revolve. Oops, create revolve, select that middle bit as an axis, click OK, and there we go, we've got chopper. And if I tilt it up a little bit, you can then see it starts to follow the lines of the actual image we've got. And I can actually flick it from being orthographic to being perspective. So I'll just see if we can get that near enough spot on. There we go. So you can kind of see what you're actually doing then is you're starting to get a good way of, first of all, sketching what you think it is. But then if you turn off the canvas and turn the canvas on, or you turn the bodies off and on, you can start to see how accurate you are in the way that you've actually created that. Does that make sense? Cool. Any questions on that so far? Everybody's on mute. You'll have to come off mute if you want to talk.
Yeah, if you were to send that to a slicer now, it would consider that a solid object, not hollow.
That's correct. It would, Dan. Yeah, yeah. So at this stage, with these, and this is why I tend to work in direct mode. I work a little bit like wood. So what I do is I create the objects first, and then I start to carve them up and chop them up. So I've created a chopper dome. There we go. Put it back into orthographics mode just so I can see what I'm doing. I've created a chopper dome. The next thing I'll do then is I'll hollow that out. So to hollow something out, I select the face that I want to hollow from, which is this bottom piece. Now, when you're selecting faces, the faces have to be perfectly flat. So you can't, if you're trying to hollow out a curved surface, it will be very, very difficult. I'm going to select that bottom one. I'm going to click on modify, and there's something there called shell. So what shell does is it lets you then take a solid object and hollow it out, and I can choose how thick I want that wall to be. So in this case, I'm going to do 6 mil, which is typically what I use. Obviously, you can use whatever you want to. Click OK, and now what you've got is you've got the hollowed out dome, if you like, which is your basic shape. Now, the way that hollow works is it looks at the outer perimeter and it tries to pull back by 6 millimeters. So one of the gotchas is if you do loads of carving on the outside to put all the detail in, and then you try and hollow it out, it'll attempt to try and follow all the details on the outside when it's hollowing, which generally means you'll get an error. If that happens, you've got a couple of options. The cheating option that I tend to do, and I'll just, again, I'll talk you through. So it won't allow me to hollow it out. So what do? Is I draw a line on the bottom. Just draw a quick line like that. And it'll all become apparent why I'm doing this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this object in half using that line. And this is a technique that you'd use if you were to, for example, wanted to chop larger parts into small parts. So I click on modify, and this time I'm going to do something called split body. And what split body does is it takes the body that's there and it uses a line to slice it. So select the body, there we go. Select the splitting tool, that one, click OK. And what I've actually got now is I've got 2 halves of a body, if that makes sense. So once I've got 2 halves, I'll move a little bit quicker on this, so so you'll see what I'm trying to do when I'm hollowing it out. So now what I've got is I've got a flat half that I can draw on. So I'm going to go into sketch mode and draw onto this flat half. And I do exactly the same as I did before. And then I'm going to use something called create project. And what that lets me do is it lets me sketch out an object that's already there. So I'm going to sketch this as the object, and I'll show you why that's important. Because I'm then going to use something called modify offset, which lets me take an object and start to offset it. So what I've done there is I've sketched the outside of that, and I'm just going to pull it back by 6 mil. And then what that's given me...
So Michael, is that offset based on the projection?
Yes, it's so all an offset does. If you've got any objects or any sketch, say like that, what offset does, if you go modify offset and you select a full circle, it lets you do a second drawing that's an offset of that sketch. If I do modify offset on this one, it'll let me do that.
Yeah, my question really was, did you have to do the projection first and then put the offset on the projection?
You did, because what we'd got previously.
Oh, because that's just a slice, isn't it? It's not the actual body.
That's right.
I get it. Yeah.
It's the actual body. It's not a sketch. Offset is a sketch tool. Does that make sense? So what that's given me now is it's given me that same 6mm shell, except it's sealed at the bottom. So I can just draw a line like that. And then what I would then do, I'm going to finish sketch now, select this one. I'm also going to select this little bottom bit here. I'm going to do exactly what I did before, which is create revolve around the axis on there. So what I've created this time is I've created a kind of I guess a chopper's shell that is 6mm in from each of the different edges. I'm going to create that as a new body. I could create it as cut, because what cut does is it combines the new body with the bodies that it can actually see. So if I bring that other body into play, what I've done here then is I've created a body inside that's 6mm in from the outside of the skin, and by combining the two under a cut mode, it'll remove the material that's on the inside like that. That makes sense? And then all I really need to do is modify, combine, get my glue out and stick those two together again, and I'm back in that same position. So what I'm saying with that is you can use the shell command to make the hole, to create the shell. But if the shell command doesn't work, what you tend to do is make a body that's a little bit smaller that sits on the inside, and then you can combine cut, and it'll give you a little bit of a hollow shape.
I guess for a typical process, do you tend to try and do all your more intricate designs after you've done your hollowing out to kind of avoid problems like this?
I do. I also very often forget. So I tend to do both. But what my preference, I guess, is to hollow it out first and then start doing the modeling afterwards, because then you know that you're working with the skin. Okay. So once you've got the basic body, that's when you can start to add more and more details. And there's a few. The tools are all quite similar. I mean, you saw how we created this little greeble here. So that's where you can start to add different layers of complexity and detail. There's no kind of quick and easy way of working on curved surfaces or dome surfaces. There is a tool that they've started to do now that allows you to project onto them, but it doesn't always give you, I guess, kind of accurate, particularly for panels. It doesn't give you accurate results. So if I was to starting to do panels on these, what I tend to do is I end up sort of sketching and cutting things. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So if for example, I wanted to do some ring work on here. So to create one of these as a ring, I'll just show you what I would do. So first of all, I'd go into sketch mode. I'll select this plane here. I'm just going to draw some lines. So the lines are going to be where I actually want the rings on the dome. So I'm going to draw that across there. I'm going to move it up 1.54 mil, which is typically the thickness of things like the R2D2 lines and panels. So I'm going to do, oops, I want me to do that at an angle, delete that. There we go. So what I've done here is I've done sort of a little bit of a U shape, if you can see. And the reason I've done that U shape is I'm going to use it to cut this body. Again, if you think it like wood, it's generally chopping things together and then gluing things up. So I'm going to click modify. I'm going to come out of sketch mode, sorry. I'm going to click modify, split body. And then when it asks me to split the body, it's asking me which body I want to split. This one. The tool I'm going to use is this one, the splitting tool. And the reason it's got that U thing is it actually does both lines for me then at once. So if you can see, what it's actually going to do is cut twice. So if I click OK, what I've actually got now is I've got this bottom piece, I've got this top piece, and then I've got a very thin piece in the middle. 3 separate bodies. But what that lets me do then is come into here, zoom in, and what I can do to create that groove that I want, if I put minus 1.54, I'm going to pull that one in a little bit. So there's a tool, which is, again, I use an awful lot, called press and pull. What press and pull does is it lets you, if I zoom out, it lets you take a specific face and try and pull that particular face in and out, if that makes sense. So what I'm using that for is to add the detail, minus 1.54. Click OK. And now what I've got is, as you can see, I've got a slice that is got a panel detail in the actual dome. And then all I need to do is modify and combine the 3 parts together, that part, and that part. Click OK. And what I've got then is I've got a panel on, I've got this little ring on the bottom. The inside is still perfectly smooth because I've not moved the panels on the inside, but the outside has got this little panel mark. Again, does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Now, the challenge with there's a couple of challenges with this, is which if you're a perfectionist, you know, you might want to sort of look at, is if you look at this cut is straight across. What it probably should be like, I'll just quickly get something so I can show what I mean, is because the dome's at this angle here, what you'd ideally want is that cut it at 90 degrees, if that makes sense. So you kind of have a cut like that instead.
Michael, a quick question.
Yep.
Do you prefer to do it that way rather than putting it on the sketch when you create the initial rotational sketch?
You can do it either way, Paul. But the reason I tend to do these afterwards is it's not very often that you have a detail that goes all the way around. So with panels, so where you've got R2D2 panels, I'll use these to do the top and the bottom of the panel, and then I'll do some vertical cuts to try and pull them ones in. So I'm not pulling in a full ring. If I was to do it on the, you know, the base R2 rings, absolutely I would do, if that makes sense, Paul. But on this doing it when I start to add details.
I understand it's as much a personal preference and what you're used to it, but I'm using FreeCAD at the moment. I'm just trying to see how, I don't know how I would do that in FreeCAD. I think at the moment, with my limited knowledge, I think I'd have to do it with the sketch. I'll have to investigate how I might do what you've just done. Yeah, you can. You can, if you know exactly where everything's going to go beforehand, you can draw the lines in, out, in, out, in, out. The other disadvantage to that, Paul, is when I said before about the shell, it makes it very difficult to shell if you put all them details in the first instance, because what it's trying to do is a 6mm shell where you've got 1.4mm things on the inside, and shell gets a bit confused when you've got more detail on the outside. But you could also put your shell on the rotational when you do your rotational.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, so I just wondered if that was your preferred way of doing it. That was really my question.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think I tend to work getting block out the basic shapes and then start to go into the different levels of detail. I think when I'm working on very, you know, kind of R2D2 domes, which is pretty complex, I prefer to do that because what I've done is I get all the outlines done in the first, I can check the shapes right, and then I can start to dig in to start to add in the panels. But you're absolutely right, you know, you can start to do that beforehand, sketching the panels in. The challenge you've got when you when you do that is if it's not a full ring, if it's just a groove that you've got that sits on the other side of a panel, it gets a little bit more complex. So there's other ways of actually creating those cuts at angles, which I'll quickly touch on. So I'm just going to go into line mode again. I'm going to create project. There's 2 different uses of project, which I always find. There's specific entities and then there's whole bodies. When you do whole bodies, it actually just does the outline of what you select, irrespective of whether it's got bits going in and out. If you select entities, you'll select a panel. So for example, if I select this entity, you can see the two lines that are in red, the top and the bottom line. And then I can select this bottom panel separately. If I select the body, I'm going to select the whole thing and it'll just do that as an outline. So as Steve said before, what I've done there is I've created a sketch, which you can see there, that's in the same shape as the body. And then if I just draw a line down the middle of that, again, so we can work in a bit of profile. But if I want to start to cut them, cut those panels out, I can actually create what's like a cutting tool, which I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I draw a line from here at 90 degrees, and once the good thing with Fusion in sketching is once you it knows the line that you're coming off, it'll automatically lock to 90 degrees. So it's not all sort of guesswork. There we go, 90 degrees. And then I'm just going to continue that line on. And again, if I kind of touch this line here and go the other side, it'll continue that line. I'll show you why I'm doing this in a second. So what I've created there is a triangle. And the reason I'm doing that, the reason I'm doing that triangle, just take the bodies, hit out sketch mode, is I'm just going to create a weird little tool. Create, revolve. This is exactly the same as what I did before. Flip the bodies off. So what I've got now, as you can see, is I've got this disc, which has got the right angle. Now, unfortunately, when I did that, it wasn't along the same center path as the main dome. So I'm just going to pull that in with what's called an align. Just pull that exactly central. There we go. So what that disc is now, it's at 90-degree angles to the main body. So what I can do, just move that down a little bit. There we go. I can use this disc as a cutting tool. So I want to put a line, say there. And what I do is modify, split body, that again. And instead of a line tool that I'm using, I'm just going to select this very lower edge of that disc as the cutting tool, and click OK. And then what I can do is I can actually, what that's done, just show if I remove that, it's created a cut, but it's created a cut at the right angle. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to move that cutting tool up a little bit. I'll move it up 1.54 mil. There we go. And then I'm going to do modify, split body, highlight that piece again, select the bottom part of that cutting tool, click OK, and hide the cutting tool. So what it's done now is it's created similar to what we did before, i.e. it's created a top part, a bottom part, and this part. But this part is now at the right angle for the actual dome, which means when I do go into grab it, press and pull minus 1.54, what it's done now is it's done that at the right kind of angle. So that's what you'd expect, if that makes sense.
How did you create the right angle? Like, how do you know?
When I pull back the sketch, so the way that I created the right angle is I sketched out the outline of the dome in the first instance, Marine, yeah? And then what I did is I just drew a line that was at 90 degrees to this angle. So for the
okay, I get it now. I get it.
You get it? Yeah. So not normally you can just do straight lines like that, and it works okay. The problem you've got with things like R2D2 domes is as it gets more towards the top, as it starts to curve, that just doesn't work because it looks awful. So you can actually get these at the right kind of angle. It's just a bit more of a faff having to create a cutting tool to do it. And there's no easy way of putting all the details on things like domes and whatever. It's generally, what you get is you tend to get quite quick at repeating these things, if that makes sense. So, and if instead I'll just pull that back a sec. There we go. If I wanted to then do a panel, or kind of a not a circle all the way around, what you would then do is you'd start to split these pieces up. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to do it very quickly, but you'll hopefully get to see what we're doing. So I'm just going to move the cutting tool up a little bit to somewhere where we're going to do a panel. Modify split body, that top piece, and then select that inner face again. So split, make another split. I'm going to move this tool up again, another 1.54 mil, like that. And then I'm going to modify split body, this top one, like that. So what I've got now is I've got two pieces, so with a bit in between. If I wanted to do a panel, what I then start to do is do some lines on top as to where I want those panels to go. So I'll do very quickly. I might want a panel that's say this big, and then what I'm going to do here is sketch, modify, split body, and this time I'm going to split this one, all three of these like that. I'm going to select this to cut it and this to cut it, click OK. And what that's done now is it's giving me, and you'll see more and more bodies are appearing, so I'm getting more and more kind of objects. So what I've done here is I've got something now that I can start to pull in. If I was doing one panel, minus 1.54, I can pull, you can see there, but that's pulling a whole recess into that dome. If I wanted to just do a panel, what I could do then is pull that sketch back up that I had at the top. There it is. Again, I'll just do this quite quickly. So just doing the horizontal lines, the other cut that I'll need to do this panel. And normally you would obviously measure these out. I'm just kind of doing it roughly to show you the concept. Finish sketch. There we go. And then modify split body. So I'm just going to do the outside of that panel now by splitting this body, and this body. There we go. With the outer line of that. So here's that one. Okay. And then modify split body, and I'll do the same. I'll just do that. Okay. So what that's given us now is it's given us lots of different parts. So what I can do is I can select that face, that face, that face. I'm pressing the shift key to do multi-selects. That face, that face, that face. That face, that face. So what I'm doing now is I'm just drawing around the outside of that panel. And I'm just going to pull that back, minus 1.54. Click OK. What that's done, if you can see, it's given us a recessed panel. And then finally, if you do modify and combine, get the glue out, and what you do then is you glue in all of this back together. Click OK. Once it's glued together as a single body, which this is, so that's your dome, as a single body, what we've done there is you've created a panel on that particular dome. If that makes sense? Yeah. Cool. Right, I know we've gone through a bit. Any questions?
Yeah, how would you measure 1.54 for that, so that you've got the right measure for the recess when you create those lines at the top of the dome?
On the top of the dome.
Yeah.
So what to do it accurately, what I would do is I'd go into draw mode, and at the point where I can see that cut, I could click on there, click on 1.54. So I know that it should actually be about there. And that's now a reference point. And then what I would then do is zoom right out again and draw a line from the center and just lock it onto that point that I've just created there. Okay. So I could do it that way. The other way that you can do it, but it's not one that comes directly from the center, but I could use modify offset. I could highlight that and I could just do 1.54 on there. So what it's done is it's took that line as a reference line and it's offset it 1.54. The reason I say that's in my eyes, I probably wouldn't do that, because what it's doing is it's drawing the line that's not from the center then, because you've offset the whole line.
Mhm.
Realistically, on a printed dome, you wouldn't be able to tell a difference. So, but you know, there's different ways of actually being able to do that.
Michael, do you parameterize your sketches at all, or do you just freehand them?
I freehand them. What I do is I highlight all the sketches and delete them once I've used them, which is horrendous for people who do all of the parameters and blueprints. But what I find personally is the way that I work is I work the fastest by doing that, as opposed to having to do constrained sketches, ensuring all that the parameters are in there, etc. So by working in direct modeling.
So deleting the sketches doesn't affect the body.
Say again, sorry.
So deleting the sketches, as you've just done, has no effect on the actual bodies that needed those sketches to create them.
No, not in direct modeling mode. Direct modeling mode is it's just like wood.
Yeah, because I've always used parametric with constraints and things. So that's really, I think, the major for what I've done in the past. That's probably the major difference.
It is.
Oh, that's really good.
And it depends what you're working on. And like I said, I would say that the way that I'm doing it is unorthodox without a doubt. And if you start to look at some of the Fusion 360 tutorials and whatnot that are on the internet, you'll see that they build the sketches, make sure the sketches are constrained, they get all the parameters on the sketches, because what they can then do is go back to and change them. What I've found is that because 3D printing, typically what I'd be doing is I'd be slicing these things up on a 500mm cut, a 200mm cut. I'd be putting joints in there. You know, what I'd end up with is a huge amount of work every time I wanted to do that. So working in direct mode, it's literally just like wood. And then what I do is I just save versions of the particular thing that I've done. So as I said, it's not the perfect way of doing it. Sorry, Steve.
That leads me on to a related question, if that's all right, Michael.
Yeah, go for it.
Kind of almost something. Yeah, you said about like saving versions of it. Is it possible to take one of those bodies, say that the chopper dome, and put it into another sketch window? So like with the little plus sign on the top right.
Yeah.
Can you do like a copy and paste between?
Yeah, you can, absolutely.
So I was trying that before on something I was working on. It didn't work.
You can't
allow me to copy and paste.
Yeah, but that's because you're not in direct mode. So if this is like this, okay. Yeah. So at the moment, if I take this here, so let me just start another one. It's quite an important part.
Yeah.
So this is a brand new sketch. Yeah. So if I copy this body, I go into the new sketch, right click on it, it's not there. I can't paste it. If I control and V, it won't do anything. If I go to that document setting, right click, do not capture design history, I'm now in direct mode. Control and V, there you go. It's there.
Oh, hallelujah. You've just saved me a lot of head scratching. Thank you.
And this is the direct mode.
Been doing that.
I think
I've literally just been doing that today.
If you watch any of the Fusion tutorials I've done, whatever, the first thing I always say is right click on document settings and turn off capture history. And you are going, said there's different ways of doing it, and it's not the blueprint way of doing things. But once you do it, everything works as you'd expect it to, particularly, if we're doing the stuff that we do. But both have to be
perfect. Thank you,
switched off. Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
So going back to that sort of recess that you did there, since you're doing a projected recess into the dome towards the center, would the emboss function work for you okay there, or?
It would do, yeah. But the emboss, and I think let's have a look. Where are you? I don't use the emboss one. just remind me where it is because
Yeah, didn't create emboss. Yeah, you were right. The first
Yeah,
one,
create.
emboss.
Um,
Up a little bit, right below when.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Yes, it does. The challenge with emboss, from what I remember when I was doing it, was actually getting the accuracy of it. Let me just have a.
On a curved surface like that, yeah, you
Yeah.
draw something, and then it will project it onto that face basically, and then into it.
Yeah. So if I
give you the accuracy around the ring that you want.
Yeah, that's I think there's the emboss one. There's another one that they've done recently where you can you can draw a sketch and you can wrap the sketch around a curved surface. But I have issues with both of them on accuracy. But let me just try the emboss. So text. Let's put some text in. So hello. Oops. Rubbish. Can't spell hello. Let's do that at 20. Make it bold. Okay.
You must have the Arabic font, don't you?
So create, emboss, select profile, hello, select the face.
Maybe it won't let you do it.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, I've not selected the face. There you go. So yeah, click OK. So that's now embossed. That's embossed it on. The challenge with that, Trevor, if you look at it, is when you look at it straight on, that lower line is curved.
Correct. Yeah.
So if
it didn't do the curve to the body.
Yes.
On that face, right?
Yeah. So if I was to do that piece of work that I've just done there, so if I was trying to do that over a panel like that, for example, I went on to, sorry, I've just muted it. You can unmute again. Create, emboss, that sketch profile, that face. You get that. That makes sense. Sorry, you're on mute, Trevor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's why I tend to do the choppy ones. There may be times that when you want to use emboss, I guess.
It does it, I guess, 90 degrees to the plane, not.
Yeah.
You're actually all wonky angles when the way that we wanted that recess to be, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you know, there may be times when you do want that kind of technique, but on the stuff that I'm doing, it probably has less of a use. Because I think I'm trying to think actually whether it was emboss or whether there's a wrap as well. Another command that lets you wrap a sketch around a curved surface, but again, you get similar effects.
Right.
So that's kind of why I don't do that. The other thing then is and curved surfaces and domes are always a bit of a nightmare to work on because you can't. If I go into sketch mode, you can't select a curved surface. You can only select flat surfaces. So I can only draw on this surface or on this thin edge here. Anything that's curved, I can't actually draw on it. So I have to create a flat surface to draw on there. So if for example, I wanted to put a circle in the middle of here for a LSI light or whatnot, I'd have to create a flat surface to be able to do that at the right angle. And that's the other area that's probably well worth pointing out. So under construct here, so we've talked a lot about sketches, we've talked about bodies. What construct lets you do is it lets you create planes that you can sketch on. And these are really, really useful, particularly when you wanted to work in different areas. So a simple example might be, if we take this greeble that I've just created, I want to create a cut that I want to cut this directly in half, for example. What I can do is I can click on construct and there's a one called midplane. So if I click on midplane and I select the top of that greeble and I select the bottom of that greeble, what it'll do, click OK, is it'll give me a flat surface in between that's exactly in the middle of it. So if I do modify, split body, highlight that, select that, click OK, what I've then got, if you look, it split it exactly in half. You can also do construct offset plane. So if I wanted to do something that was 5mm and I go -5 down, it'll give me another one that's 5mm down. So I can modify split body and I can use that to split. And of course, these are also planes. So if I wanted to, I could sketch on these and do things with them. Where these come into their own when you're starting to work on things like on domes, if you go onto construct, you can create a plane across 3 points. So a bit like a tripod that you get for a camera. So what it says is, give me 3 points and I'll show you a flat plane across those 3 points. So if I click 3 points and I select the point of that corner, the point of that corner, and the point of that corner, and click OK, what it's done is it's created a plane that's just at the right angle and just at the right place to make that hole, if that makes sense. So then what I do is I go into sketch mode onto that particular plane. I can, if I want to point a reference, I can click project, and I can actually just, using the specific entities, I can project that particular panel. So even though if the bodies aren't there, that's now a sketch. And then with that as a reference, I can then start to go, I'll tell you what, we'll just draw a line there, draw a line there, get approximately the center, hit circle, hit circle, lock the circle into there. I can start to create a circle then that would actually cut a perfect circle out of that panel. So that's how I'd get a sketch that's at the right angle, and then it's just a matter of modifying split body and using that circle as a cutting tool, and what it'll do is it'll cut that hole out like that. So then I can start to do PSI. Now, there's tools in here. If you click on here on the body, another common use tool is just to move. It's really simple, but what it does, it lets you move stuff around. So you can move objects around. It sounds very exciting. If you do that on holes, you can actually move holes around. So, you know, it doesn't just work on objects. It can work on things that are within the actual model. And likewise, you know, if you've got planes, you can press and pull those planes so you can bring those in and out. So lots of tweaking things you can do once you've actually got your basics in place. That makes sense.
Michael, what's your formula for usually getting real world dimensions?
What do you mean by that? You mean how do you take references off movies or pictures or whatever and get accurate models?
Yeah.
There's not one formula. I think what I tend to do is I mean, if you take Dio, for example, I got a load of screen captures from Celebration when Dio first came out, and he rolled past R2-D2, which gave me a really good point of reference. So what I then did is pull up the thing that I knew that was accurate was R2-D2, went into perspective mode, and then from that, kind of what you can then do is start to guess the height and guess the width based on it. And then what you do is then you pretty much kind of compare until you get that right.
So it's a series of just refining it, printing it, and then going, this might be a little bit off. Let me go back into the file and make the appropriate adjustments.
Yeah, I don't tend to print it. What I tend to do is model it, and then what I'll do is where I pulled those canvases in, what I'll do is I'll start to then use the canvases as reference. So I'll do a fair bit of kind of, right, okay, so I think this chopper dome's about right. You know, is if can I get it so that it fits on that?
So that's how you get your proportions kind of close. But in terms of like the spacing between the pie pieces, that you're kind of it's an approximation more or less. Is that a fair assumption? Or
it is. It depends. It completely depends on the reference you've got. So the ideal reference is blueprints and isometric drawings. So if you take R2-D2, for example, there's absolutely an amazing amount of stuff that's out there for R2-D2, you know, blueprints. the builders clubs have access to measuring the original model. So there's no guesstimation on that. That's literally just working off blueprints and putting it into the sketch. If you take something like Dio, which there was no reference at all other than some images that when it rolled out on Celebration, that was a lot more of the kind of, first of all, doing a sketch, comparing it to screen captures or renders, looking at it from every different angle and then tweaking. BD1 was like that as well. So with BD1, there was no game meshes out when we started to design that. So that was all kind of guesstimation, really.
Very impressive.
But it's here somewhere when you make a Dio model, and it turns out when you have finished it that it is actually 10% too small.
Yes.
That's when the freehand mode here really comes to bite you, because you can't really scale up at 10%, and that's.
Yes. Yeah. It depends on the source materials. I mean, so Chopper had some amazing source material for Chopper. You know, sort of isometric ones, and also the some of the meshes that we used. So I know with Chopper that it's pixel perfect. R2D2 is absolutely perfect. The mouse droid isn't too bad at all, but there isn't the club's not had the same access to the mouse as they've had to the other stuff. So again, there's some great images. Now the ones that I've seen that they've been based on it, there's been some perspective, because the challenge you've got with the mouse is it's angled like that both ways. So when you start to tip it back and forth, those angles change. So there's some tweaks on that I had to do to get it where I wanted it to be. And then Dio was one where it was just trying to find every potential image that you could get. There's some great Getty images from the guys that were photographing at the time that managed to get some good high res ones on, but that was a challenge. Getting the general proportions and size and scale of it's not too bad. The challenge is getting all of the detail around things like greebles and bits that you can't see. You know, the bits that are under a panel, or the back of certain droids.
Yeah, because a lot of that stuff is obscured. It's like you can't get a.
Yeah, exactly. And with Dio, the back of his head was painted black, which gave another degree of complexity. But it was quite funny with Dio, because I'd got some reasonable images on the very first one that came out, and then I started to model it. And the rest of it I just made up, because I thought it looks like a greeble. It'll be a bit of a laugh. It's great, you know, and it's also quite good fun doing creative stuff. So I did this incredibly ornate kind of rear head panel, and then I saw a couple of other ones on Thingiverse that people had modelled that had actually copied the panel that I'd made up. So they were kind of everybody just copied everybody else. But then there was a fantastic thing on. I think it was when they did Black Force Friday, where they had Dio roll out and he turned his head to BB-8, so the back of his head was in perfect camera shot. It was lit really well, so I had to redo the whole back of the greeble on that, which was just in time for doing the V2. The other thing is that the models aren't the same. So the red carpet model for Dio was a different size and proportion than the one that they used in the movie. So when you started to look at the two, you went, you know, there's quite a bit out. And I know the BB-8 guys had a similar thing with theirs. But you do get a bit obsessive with these things. I remember with BD1, I was Googling the average size of human heads, because on BD1 he's sat on the shoulder of Carlo, whatever the guy's called, as the main protagonist. And the only thing as a reference was a head. So I thought, has he got a big head, or has he got a small head, or an average size head? So you end up getting those as point of reference.
Is there any challenges with Chopper in that he's digital and probably was never actually built?
Yes, absolutely with Chopper. I've got Chopper. I've got the thingy one. Chopper there. Yeah, so the biggest challenge with Chopper is his arms on his head physically wouldn't fit into his head. So the arms that come out couldn't possibly fit into the head things as well. But anyway, we'll jump back to this one. Yeah, so I mean that was for a first session. That was pretty much what I wanted to cover. I didn't. There's one other thing I just wanted to mention, for which is a little bit more advanced, but what Fusion supports is add-ins. So you can actually get little bits of software that do custom things, and one of the questions I get asked a fair bit around is gears. So there's a little plugin called Spur Gear which you can download. It doesn't come as default, but you can just download this bit of software. And what Spur Gear lets you do is create custom gears. So you can choose 24 teeth, 20-degree pressure angle, and that'll give me a 304 millimeter diameter gear. So all of the gears that I'll create for the little mechanisms or whatnot, I'll do through this. And it's lets you put parameters in, you click OK, and then what it actually does is it then creates a gear, which I've probably lost somewhere in this design. There it is. There we go. Camera's off. Yeah, so it's kind of automatically generates gears to start with, and then once I've got the base model, that's when I'll start to maybe cut a bigger hole in it, or start to model it up so that it's the right shape and dimensions that I want to do. Cool. Okay, guys, any burning questions on Fusion?
Michael, just on that, what you were just doing then on the cogs,
yeah.
How would you do like you've done on the R2 Dome with the teeth internal? How would you do that on that cog there now if you wanted to? I know you'll have to do another cog.
Yeah, there's two ways. There's I found another utility, not a utility, an add-on. There was another add-on.
Yeah.
Which
you do sound.
I think this fails actually when it loads up. I found an add-on that actually does the inner cogs as well, Mark. So that's one way of doing it. The other way that I've done on a lot of the is cutting a tooth out and creating a pattern. So in other words, what I do is you've got the outer tooth. So what I'll do is I'll take one of these teeth and I'll draw a circle, and what I'll do is I'll create a pattern of them teeth facing the inside, if that makes sense. So like manually creating a gear almost, but there is a gear generator that does it for you as well. Have you got the Spur one, Mark?
Yeah, I've got it. I put it on. I've been using it, but I just couldn't fathom out how to do the one so the teeth are the other way around. So you could use an outer ring and then do the teeth again. Because on the droid I'm designing, I'm trying to get something to do, and it's been baffling me. That's why, hence why I've just asked you the question there.
Yeah, I did. It's when I fire up at the moment, it's giving me a plugin failure. But what I did find, this is some work that I was doing for the mouse droid, but I'll just clear this up a little bit.
What happened with?
I'll show you what that. So the tool that I found was the one that I used for the planetary gearbox. So this, there we go. So you can see on that one. Yeah. This is the drive unit for the track droid, but I'm also using it for the mouse at the moment. I'll just pull this back. So where we use that Spur Gear, Mark, I found something that also created a planetary gearbox. So it'll do the inner gears there, which is what you're talking about. If you can see that.
Yeah.
So it'll do the inner gears, and it'll also do your planetary gears and your center gear.
Right. Okay.
So it's another plugin. If you go onto Fusion's website, there's literally hundreds of those plugins.
Yeah, I've got a load plugged in on the downloaded onto my Fusion, but as I said to you before, my laptop is not man enough to really run it. It's a bit tedious, but it's getting there slowly.
Yeah, the big difference is if you chop these gears off and create one manually, you don't get this nice curved piece that you get on the ones that are generated. So the generated ones are better. As I said, I've got some tools that have generated it for doing this one as well.
So what is it you're using to model the gears for that?
For the planetary gear one.
Yeah, I mean, you've all of your gears are amazing, and you've done so many different little gears. Do you have a couple of different softwares that you use for modeling gears, or?
I just use that. The main one that I've done for all of them up to now has been that spur gear one that I've just shown. So just that one, creating the gears. But I did find a plugin that did a planetary gearbox. So I'd literally just use those two. And to be honest, most of them has just been used off that one thing that generates the gears. But there's lots of, I think I posted a YouTube clip as well that shows how to create angled gears as well.
Yeah, we did do that a while back.
Yeah. So, but that's basically taking a gear that's been generated, a standard gear like you just shown how I've generated it, and then using one of the tools that creates what's called a loft, where it actually takes a small image and a large image and generates the gaps in between, if you like. So you can create a lot of different gears off that one tool just by the standard modeling tools that sit inside Fusion.
Yeah, I tried generating some angled gears, some bevel gears, and the results I got were that it was hard to get you could make something that worked, but it was very hard to get the angle to be where they would fit at 90 degrees or where they would fit at the gear generator just gives you something that it's like, yeah, if you bring it in at 90 degrees, this works, and anything else you're out. And it didn't give you a 45 because it has so much to do with the number of teeth or the number of, it gets complicated.
It does, and that's where I mean I so if I'm doing beveled gears, and I don't know what the pitch diameter is on this. I think it's I don't know, it's 23, is it, something like that? 23. Yeah. So what I'll do a quick bevel gear. What I'll tend to do is do it manually, which is I'll create a plane, finish sketch, solid, construct. Play an angle like that. I can't see the planes. There we go. Yeah, bear with me. Create project. Okay, line. What was that? 23 divided by 2. Like that. That's it.
I think actually what you've just done is quite a useful thing to point out to people as well, is that you can actually use mathematical calculations in your dimensions when you're drawing out sketches and things, can't you?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So I put 23 divided by 2 as opposed to working out in my head. Create loft. So if I create loft of that image to that single point there, give it a bit of chance to think about it. New body. There we go. So very quickly, what I've created there is a 45-degree angle gear using the profile of the actual gear. So if I've got that one there, Control C, Control V,
Yeah.
It's going to try and rotate it. Look.
Oh, never mind. It is.
Where's that done? There we go.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get this in place. 45 degree. Yeah, so that's kind of very quickly a way of doing a beveled angle. They're a bit out of mesh then. I can actually move. What I tend to do is take the basic gears.
Yeah.
There we go. So you see there, you've got a meshing gear then. That's a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
And then you usually cut off the top just to have a little bit more range.
Yeah.
So that, because the tops get kind of tight.
That's right. Yeah. So I'd
make a parallel plane and just cut it down a little bit so it doesn't come to a point where everything gets so tight.
Yeah, that's I tend to take the edges off them as well. I'm gonna so it just tidies it up that bit, and then maybe do got an offset plane against that one, so about like that. Modify split body that, and then get rid of that there very, very quickly. Yeah, so it's end up something like that. Very rough one, but that's what I do. That gets
That's beautiful. Thank you. That helped me a lot.
Yeah, there is. It's quite the way that angled gears work. Which I'll just do a very quick sketch while you're here. So the way that angled gears work is that if you've got a big gear and a small gear like that, what you're looking at is where the intersect point is of the two gears, which is at that point there. So if you've, which makes sense. So doing a purely 90-degree angle one is quite easy, because all you're doing is you've just got to pull it out at half the distance of what the actual mesh diameter is. When you're doing ones that are different gear ratios, what you've got is you've got one that's a big gear, one that's a small gear. So the point that you're actually lofting to, when you pull the loft out to a point, is that point. So what you'll end up with is a gear that's shaped like that, and it meshing with a gear that's shaped like that, if that makes sense. So it gets a bit more complicated when
These
you
are amazing things. Thank you.
So yeah, and it's just kind of once you've got that sort of concept, and that you also know then that the easy way of making angle gears is just pulling a point out at somewhere here, and then just doing a loft to a single point. It then makes that you can do all sorts of different gears. So if I just do create loft to that single point there, you can create whichever sort of profile and gears that you want to do. So hopefully that was useful. Must remember not to save this, because this is my working mouse. Don't save. Yeah, cool. Any more questions?
I've got a very basic one, Michael, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
When you've got a body and you or a sketch and you extrude it, do you typically, the operation type, you've got like obviously join, if you're expanding something out that already exists, but you've also got like new body and new component. Why would you use either new body or new component? Can you just tell me a bit about each of those two types?
Yeah, so I only ever use bodies, Steve, start with. But what components allow you to do is allow you to create mechanical subsets of what you're designing. If you get onto a little bit more of the complex stuff, which things like the assemble, so you can actually create joints in here, so you can move arms and things like that. What you do is one part of the thing that moves is one component, and the other part is another component, and then you'll joint them on a single point, and they'll stay together. So components are kind of like ways of creating subgroups that allow you to construct quite complex mechanisms.
Okay, but if you're just doing sort of basic separate things, you can just have objects rather than components.
Yeah, I literally just create bodies.
Bodies, yeah.
Very, very, very seldomly create components. The only time I create components is when I've wanted to do complex gearing or joints, just to see how it actually functions. Cool. Any more? No? Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for sitting through it. Hopefully it was useful.
Very. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Extremely useful. Brilliant.
I'm glad. Yeah, hopefully we covered the basics.
Thank you.
The main thing is just to have a play around with it. What we've got coming up as well is Gordon has agreed that he'll come and do a session on some of the soft body modeling. So whilst what I've covered here is hard body, so that's kind of your mechanical R2D2 stuff. So what Gordon's agreed to do is he'll probably do something in ZBrush. So he's going to take something like an R2D2 leg and make it a little bit more organic, just to give you a different flavour on the different sorts of modelling styles. And then there's some other areas on things like Sculpt, and there's a lot more complex stuff that sits in Fusion that we can cover off in later ones. But equally, if you want anything covering off specifically, give us a shout and we can add it into future sessions.
Yeah, like I'd love to see somebody build a 3D model of Han frozen in carbonite to get his face in there, and that would be really pretty neat.
Yeah, I mean, I had a chat with Gordon. He said he'd do it. Gordon obviously does it professionally as well, because that's part of what he does as in his job. So it'd be outstanding to see him do some of the soft stuff modelling. I've done a little bit. It's a bit more like working in clay rather than working in mechanical stuff. I think it'd be quite cool to see how that kind of unfolds and how easy it is to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Okay, guys. Well, happy Sunday. Have fun.
Happy Sunday.
And
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been amazing.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Michael.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Michael.